Hello learners, welcome to the another session of chemical hazards of environmental and occupational hazards. Today we are going to discuss about corrosive chemical materials. Before going into the details of this one, we have to recapitulate what we have studied and learnt in the previous session. So in the previous session we have discussed about hazardous materials and waste which are a part of many working situations and also environments that can be found in many types of facilities and job sites. It is very important for employees to know how to recognize these potentially dangerous substances and chemicals and how to use and dispose of them properly. And applications of chemical sciences have contributed significantly to the advancement of the human civilization. So the chemical industry has been a vital sector of the modern industrialized economy. The production, processing and the use of chemicals in modern society that has been accompanied by global scale environmental pollution and also natural resource depletion and health impacts. So the depletion of the stratospheric ozone layer by the chlorofluorocarbons and also the bioaccumulation of chlorinated organic pesticides in the food chain that demonstrates the need for more comprehensive consideration of the potential impacts of chemicals that are using in society today. So today we are going to discuss about what is meant by the chemical hazard. So a chemical hazard is one of the occupational hazards that is caused by the exposure to chemical substances in the form of either liquid or gas. Sometimes it may be a solid also which is present in the workplace. So chemical exposure in certain occupations that can cause acute or long-term adverse effects on health. So when exposed to a chemical substances that acts in three different ways. One is the local action and the other way is the inhalation and the third one is the ingestion. So if we will look into that hazard pictographs that are the type of labeling systems that alerts people at a glance that there is something hazardous in nature which is present. So these symbols help to identify whether these chemicals are going to be in use and they may pose potentially adverse effects and also they may cause the physical harm or harm to the environment. So these symbols which are distinctive in nature and they are shaped like diamond with red borders. So depending on the nature of the chemicals, the chemical hazards are classified into three types. Flammable chemical materials that is any form of the chemical substances either solid, liquid, vapor or gas that catch fire instantly and burns immediately in the presence of air. This part we have discussed. And the second is the corrosive chemicals, that is corrosive chemicals which are the substances that can cause the destruction or permanent damage to the human skin tissue in contacted area or it may be a metal also. So they can be a liquid or solid or gases that can also have adverse health effects to the eyes, skin and respiratory tract. So this thing we are going to discuss today. And also third variety is that is a reactive materials. So reactive materials are the substances that have the tendency to decompose spontaneously and sometimes vigorous reaction takes place when contact with the other chemicals because of the inherent properties. So learner, today we are going to discuss and learn about what are the corrosive chemical materials and how it will damage to the human beings as well as the general environment. So what are the corrosive materials or chemicals? So these are the substances that can cause destruction or permanent damage to the human skin tissue in the contacted area or it may be any material which is made up of the metals. So they can be liquids, solids or gases and also have the adverse health effects to the eyes, skin and respiratory tract. So according to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, so the corrosive substances or corrosive chemicals is a chemical that produces destruction of skin tissue like visible necrosis through the epidermis and also into the dermis and at least one of 3 tested animals after exposure up to 4 hours duration. So the corrosive reactions are clearly mentioned by the ulcers and bleeding and then scab and also by the end of the observation of the 14 days. So, this is the stipulated time. So, this time if you will observe, we can say that it is a damage because of that particular corrosive chemical. And also sometimes discoloration due to the what is that, blanching of the skin, that is a complete areas of the alopecia, that means the loss of hair and scars can be observed. Rust and also electrochemical oxidation are also some of the forms of the corrosion that occurs on metals. But these typically occur in much slower time scale, and also they are not particularly the health effect and are not usually noted on the safety data sheet, that except that perhaps in storage recommendations. So, many chemicals, they are commonly used in the labs or the laboratories, are corrosive or irritating to body tissue. They present a hazard to the eyes and also skin by direct contact to the respiratory tract by the inhalation or the ingestion or the swallowing, to the gastrointestinal system by the ingestion. So, these corrosive chemicals are the substances, they will destroy or damage living tissue by the direct contact. For example, some acids, bases and the dehydrating agents and oxidizing agents and some of the organic compounds are also corrosive in nature. If we will consider examples of the acidic corrosives, if we will consider some inorganic acids, that is a hydrochloric acid or nitric acid, sulfuric acid. If you will go for the organic acids like acetic acid and propionic acid, and some alkaline or basic corrosives are also there, like sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, and some dehydrating agents are also corrosive in nature, like phosphorus pentoxide and calcium oxide. And some oxidizing agents, they are also corrosive in nature, like halogen gases, hydrogen peroxide if it is concentrated one, and perchloric acid. These are considered under this one. And if we will consider the organic corrosive substances like butylamine is a typical example. So, all types of acid substances are considered as corrosive. That is, a sulfuric acid is one of the most extensively used corrosives in dyes, paints and petroleum processing and automobile batteries. So, what are the health consequences of these corrosive substances when we will come across this one? So, extreme caution has to be taken when handling these corrosive chemicals, or severe injury may result. So, if we will consider the concentrated acids that can cause painful and sometimes severe burns and peeling of the skin. If it is inorganic hydroxides, that can cause serious damage to skin tissue because a protective protein layer does not form. Even a dilute solution like sodium or potassium hydroxide can attack skin by reacting with the fat tissues and also forming a soapy layer and then slick film. And also at first, if we will consider skin contact with the phenol, for example, may not be painful, but the exposed area may turn completely white due to the severe burn. So, systemic poisoning is also sometimes may happen and also resulted from the dermal exposure. And skin contact directly with low concentration of the hydrofluoric acid may not cause pain immediately, but can cause tissue damage if not treated properly in time. So, higher concentrations of the hydrogen fluoride, that is a 50% or greater than hydrofluoric acid, that can cause the immediate painful damage to the tissues. For example, glutaraldehyde is there. It is used in medical and dental treatment as a disinfectant and also sterilizing agent, but when inhaled or swallowed, it shows harmful health effects. So, it has a potential to cause respiratory tract, eye and then skin irritation, and also causes the permanent eye damage. And also some corrosives, not only they are corrosive in nature, they are flammable also. That means they are combustible in nature immediately whenever there is an ignition source is there. So, that means it will immediately catch the fire and burn, or sometimes it may explode at higher concentrations under pressure. So, some corrosive compounds which are resistant with other chemicals and also undergo some chemical reactions that can produce toxic as well as the explosive products when they come in contact with each other. So many corrosive compounds which attack, or otherwise I can say that it is a corrode the metal substances, metal articles. So contact with the corrosives are the corrosive substances that can damage the containers, equipment, installation, and also the building components that is made from the unsuitable materials. So the rate of metal corrosion is greater when corrosive is stronger and the temperature is higher. So these are the specifications. When acid attacks on the metals, that is otherwise I can say that hydrogen gas is immediately given off from that area. So because this is a flammable gas. So that means once acid is come in contact with any substances, hydrogen gas will be released. Because it is a flammable gas, it can burn or explode if the ignition source is present. And some common bases are there like sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide that can also attack some metals like aluminum, zinc or galvanized metal and tin to produce the hydrogen gas. So the MSDs for the particular corrosives should be explained with which metals or other materials like plastics or wood it will attack, and some corrosives are also flammable or combustible that can easily catch fire and burn or explode, and some corrosives are incompatible with other chemicals, so they may undergo dangerous chemical reactions and interact with each other and give off toxic or explosive products if they will come in contact with each other. So the bases like caustic soda, generally I am telling, so it is used in soaps, detergents and then water treatment plants that can cause burning, swelling and also blister formation. When it come in contact with eyes, that causes permanent eye blindness. So while inhaling these chemicals damages the tissues of the nose, mouth, throat and also lungs. And the ingestion or the swallowing of these type of chemicals resulted in extreme pain and damages to the internal organs, and sometimes the death will happen. So the diluted form of these corrosive chemicals are also known as some irritants, and compounds like ammonia, antifreeze chemicals, thinners and degreasers and acids are some of the examples for the irritants. So these irritants are also generated during the combustion as byproducts also, like nitrogen dioxide is produced in the automobile exhaust, which is an irritant. And another example I can give you that aromatic nitroamino compounds like trinitrotoluene, that is a TNT, and aniline, that causes the systemic effects when absorbed through the skin. And occupational dermatitis, that is also caused because of the contact with the substances like rubber, machine oil, x-rays, lime and then caustic alkali, that is a strong basis. So we have to consider that how to handle them or how to store. So this safety handling for the corrosives are also most important, and it is specified in the SDS. That is to ensure the safety handling of these corrosives, some of these special handling procedures have to be used, like always store corrosives properly and also segregate acids from the bases and also inorganics from the organics. And also sometimes it refers to the chemical storage section, that may be information has to be given. And also it always a laboratory, that is a coat, laboratory coat, or that is an apron or the gloves, and then chemical splash goggles. And also when working with the corrosives, these measurements are the measures, that is a personal protective equipment has to be used. And wearing of the personal protective equipment is also appropriately mentioned, and then we have to provide to the employees. And to dilute the acids, that is also most important step in the normal laboratories, that is carefully adding the acid to the water, not the water to the acid. So this will minimize any reaction. And also corrosives, especially like inorganic bases like sodium hydroxide, that may be a very slippery in nature. So handle these chemicals with care and clean any spills or leaks or splashes or some dribbles immediately. So, in the working in a chemical fume hood, when handling fuming acids or volatile irritants like ammonium hydroxide. So, there should be a continuous flow eye wash station should be in every working area where corrosives are present. So, the emergency shower that is also should be installed within the 55 feet of that area. So far we have seen that some of the compounds which are corrosive in nature. If we will consider the corrosive liquids like mineral acids, alkali solutions and also some oxidizers, they represent a very significant hazardous effect because of the skin or the eye contact that can readily occur from the splashes, and their effect on the human tissue generally plays a very rapidly, like for example bromine or sodium hydroxide or sulfuric acid and hydrogen peroxide are some of the examples of highly corrosive liquids. So, some important points here we have to consider are the the eyes which are particularly vulnerable in nature. So, it is therefore essential that approved eye and face protection has to be worn in all laboratories where corrosive chemicals are handled, and also gloves which are chemically resistant and protective clothing should be worn to protect against the skin contact. And to avoid flash steam explosion because of the large amount of the heat is evolved, so always adds acids or bases to water and not the reverse way. And acids and bases must be segregated for the storage, and liquid corrosives that should be stored below the eye level, and adequate quantities of the spills and the control measures should be readily available, and also the specialized spill kits for acids as well as the bases which are available through the most of the chemicals and laboratory safety supply catalogs. And corrosive gases and then vapors are also hazardous in nature, and also it will be given an adverse effects for the all parts of the body, that is a certain organs like eyes and the respiratory tract which are particularly sensitive in area. So, here the magnitude of the effect is associated with the solubility of the material and also in the body fluids. So, highly soluble gases like ammonia or the hydrogen chloride, they can cause the severe nose and throat irritation, and other substances like the lower solubility like nitrogen dioxide or phosgene or sulfur dioxide, they can penetrate deep into the lungs. So, warning properties like odor or eye, nose or respiratory tract irritation, that should be inadequate with the some substances. So, they should not be relied upon the warning of the overexposures. So, performing the manipulations of the materials that gives an inhalation hazard in a chemical fume hood to control the exposure or wear appropriate respiratory protection. And also we have to consider that protecting all exposed skin surfaces from the contact with corrosives or the irritating gases and vapors. And most important is regulators and also valves should be closed properly when the cylinder is not in use. So that means we have to monitor, supervise, and also flushed with dry air or nitrogen after the use. So, to avoid any the residual gases. So, when corrosive gases are to be discharged into a liquid, a trap or a check valve or vacuum brake device should be employed compulsory to prevent the dangerous reverse flow. And some corrosive solids like sodium hydroxide, phenol, that can cause the burns to the skin and eyes. So, dust form of corrosives, that is solids that can be inhaled and cause the irritation or burns to the respiratory tract. And many corrosive solids like potassium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide, that can produce considerable heat when dissolved in water. So, in that cases we have to wear gloves and eye protection when handling these corrosive solids. When mixing with water, and always we have seen that the slowly add the corrosive solid to water, stirring continuously, and also immediately cooling procedure is also necessary. If there is a possibility of generating a significant amount of dust or the conducting work in we have to advise them this work has to be performed in the fume cupboard. Now we will look into the storage of acids. For example, mineral acids like phosphoric acid, hydrochloric acid, nitric acid, sulfuric acid and perchloric acid. These can be stored in a cabinet designed for corrosive acids. Nitric acid, that is also should be stored with an oxidizers. These non-metallic cabinets, they have no internal metallic parts, acid resistant coating and a cabinet floor constructed to be able to contain spillage, and sometimes it is a volatile acids like fuming nitric acid and then sulfuric acid. They should be stored either in an acid cabinet or in an vented cabinet like a fume hood base, particularly after they have been opened. So, concentrated mineral acids that can be very reactive even with each other. So, they are highly reactive even with interaction with each other. And if you will consider the organic acids like acetic acid, that should be stored separately from the mineral acids, because it is always best to segregate acetic acid that can be stored with the other flammable liquids, and picric acid that can also is one of the form of the explosive salts with many metals, and sometimes it itself be very hazardous and explode when it is in dry condition. So, it is incompatible with other storage groups and also should be stored separately. So, perchloric acid, which is an extremely powerful oxidizer, and it should be kept away from the all organic minerals. It should also be stored separately. So, corrosive materials pose serious immediate risk to the skin, tissues, eyes and also other parts of the body. So, any body part coming in contact with corrosive material, that should be flushed with water immediately, and then medical attention or the opinion should be sought compulsory. So, almost every medical resources, and then there should be a standard SDS, like the water flushing should last for 15 minutes. However, there is some question whether such long flushing periods may offer significant benefit in all cases, particularly when it could be unnecessary delay the course of emergency treatment. So, these things have to be maintained. Sometimes with particularly dangerous chemicals like a concentrated hydrofluoric acid, rinsing more than 5 minutes is compulsory. So, to minimize the less effective or the administering treatment with the calcium gluconate gel. So, like this, if a chemical accident that involves traumatic injuries, that means a shorter rinse period may be necessary in order to avoid the bleeding. So, these are the things we have to consider whenever there is a corrosive chemicals are come in contact with the skin or any person. So, all these things you have to understood. Dear learner, you must have experienced sometimes in the laboratory while studying, while performing some experiments, this type of hazards as well as some adverse effects on our skin. So, I would like to conclude that we have so far discussed the chemical products which are instrumental in providing food, shelter and then comforts which make us pleasant. But when misused, the same products, they can be hazardous and also put us trouble, and also it harm to the human beings. And also we have discussed so far that basic exposure to chemicals that can cause the systemic reactions, and they also inhalation, ingestion or the absorption procedures, they will enter into our body. And also some cancer causing chemicals we have discussed, and various types of corrosive materials that can attack and chemically destroy whenever exposed to the body tissue. So, this can damage or even destroy metal surfaces. So, they begin to cause damage as soon as they touch the skin or eyes, respiratory tract or digestive tract or metal substances or metal surfaces. So, they might be hazardous in other ways too, depending on the particular corrosive material. So, most corrosives are either acids or bases, and some acids like I would like to emphasize particularly that hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, nitric acid and hydrofluoric acid. and bases like ammonium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide, normally we can call it as a caustic soda. And these corrosives can also burn and also destroy the body tissue on come in contact. The stronger or more concentrative the corrosive material, the longer and it touches the body, the worse is the injury will be. They can severely irritate or some cases burn the eyes. So this could be resulted in scars or permanent blindness. The stronger or more concentrated the corrosive material and the longer it touches the eyes, the worse the injury will be. So you must have noticed the how to protect ourselves whenever we are working with the corrosive chemicals. I think you must have benefited with this session. In the next session, we will come up with the other issue of the chemical hazards. Thank you.